Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Hi, it's Dr. Gemma. Welcome back to episode 15. This episode is brought to you by Eleanor the Collie. It's not really brought to you by Eleanor, but she insists I say this because she believes that Minerva, our little black cat, is getting a little too much airtime. So equal time for everyone. I'm sitting here recording in my study on Sunday, February 14th at 7:11 p.m., which means I have to say Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I hope everybody's doing really well. Please feel free to comment on anything I say here on our website at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com or on our group on Ravelry. There are links to everything I'm about to talk about in our show notes in both those locations. Please feel free to add yourself to the Cognitive Listeners Map, and also feel free to enjoy my YouTube channel, Dr. Gemma, which the word doctor is spelled out. On that channel, you can find my 1-minute flash tips for getting through the pandemic, and also some longer discussions about strategies I typically say in therapy. If you'd like to buy me a coffee, there is a link to that. I mentioned that I would be willing to do a cognitive fiber retreat. 2 of you immediately jumped on that. Thank you. I am honored and complimented by that. I don't know how that would happen until we have a much bigger number of people vaccinated in the United States, but it is not outside the realm of possibilities. So if you're interested in a cognitive fiber retreat, you should probably let me know, either on the blog page or on the Ravelry group, if you're comfortable being on Ravelry these days. Please be aware that I will not add you to my followers on Instagram because I used to work in a prison, and that's a little too scary. Okay, so if you'd like to follow me, please follow me on cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com or on the Ravelry group. Please also feel free to introduce or reintroduce yourself in the introductions section on the Ravelry group. The introductions thread is stickied to the top of the Ravelry discussion group. In the warm thanks department, thank you, Yolanda, alias Some Frills, and of course Zoe Juniper for that delicious coffee. I greatly appreciate it, and that goes towards the monthly fee of $20 for my space on Libsyn. I appreciate that. It's very kind of you. Everybody enjoys some delicious coffee. I had to laugh when one of you said, you need a really strong coffee this month. You're not kidding. I'm going to try to stay off public events for a little while, though, and instead I'm going to go on to what's on my hooks and needles. Well, happiness in my heart. I finished the beautiful Om shawl. This is Michelle Miller's design, and I talked last week about how you can get Michelle Miller, alias Fickle Knitters patterns, downloaded for free from Ravelry. She has generously made them free at the beginning of the pandemic, even though on the actual pages it says they cannot be downloaded. They can. Just go to the top right of the page. Anyway, I finished the Om shawl. Wow. You want to talk about satisfying. The pictures are in the show notes. It's so beautiful. And I haven't blocked it because I'm a little worried that it might be fragile after 8 years of various odd problems. So I'm looking at blocking it, but if I do, I don't think it's going to be very tight blocking or very stressful because I'm really more worried about the yarn being a little fragile. It doesn't need to be blocked. I mean, yes, you could argue it might look better, particularly the knitted on lace edge. However, there's so many mistakes in that lace edging, I'm not sure I would want you to see them. But I am not willing to damage the shawl. It's very big and very generous without blocking. And I just love it. And it is the perfect thing to go around my neck over a lighter dress or shirt because it's so lightweight. Usually in the winter, I wear a lot of infinity cowls that I've made, and I've made a lot of infinity cowls. You know me in the calm cowl. However, I finally figured out that these beautiful lace shawls are so terrific in slightly warmer weather when you don't want something heavy around your neck. So I'm really, really happy about that. In the progress queue, we have the Spectrum socks. These are gorgeous. This is in a self-striping yarn by Rock and String Yarns, and the colorway is called Roy G. Biv, and it is the Spectrum, and they're just gorgeous. They knit up like lightning. I'm really not giving them much attention unless I'm busy doing something fiddly with all my other projects, and yet the first sock is ripping right along towards the place where I will put in waste yarn for the afterthought heel. I like Rock and String's yarn a great deal. Again, this falls into the category of somewhat expensive for my taste, but boy, does she do a good job on the dyeing. And I've never had any color run from any socks I've made by her, and I've made quite a few of her self-striping socks. So, you know, when you figure you're ready to go in there and blow $30 on a skein of sock yarn, this is one of the good places to do it. And you know me. I mean, I'm the one who's trying to score $4 for a pair of socks in cheap bamboo blend yarn at Joann Fabrics, but every now and then I just have to go and blow the weekly allowance on something exotic like this. And they are gorgeous. I do not currently have a picture of them. I'll see if I can get a picture in there. I might not be able to right now. At any rate, now that I finished the beautiful Ohm shawl, I decided I needed to do more lace by Michelle Miller, but I have not knitted lace for about 5 years. So I went looking through her one skein shawls for the easiest thing I could find. Also, I was limited because the yarn I pulled was from Deep Stash. It is by Fiber Files, who now dyes under the name Sterling Ridge, but hasn't dyed in a while, is currently selling masks on eBay, I believe. Anyway, Fiber Files yarn was an MCN in a colorway called Pacifica. And it's just so beautiful. And I looked at it. It's also heavy. It's a heavy sock, which is unusual. And I said, you know, I don't really think I can make that into socks. I really want to make a shawl out of it. In fact, I'm sure I bought it to make some shawl, although I don't know which one, because I had forgotten to even enter the yarn into my Ravelry stash, which is odd for me. Usually the minute I buy yarn, even online, I'll take a picture, add it to the stash, even before it arrives at my home. So there I was with this beautiful skein, and most of Michelle's one skein patterns take about 400 yards. This one was going to fall lamentably short. I think it's like 370 yards. So I went to the Wild Lettuce shawl because it's easy. It's a beginner lace pattern, but also it's low enough yardage that I thought I could finish it. I'm now looking at it. I'm working on the body of it, and it's basically two pieces, a body with a simple lace pattern, and then a knitted on lace edge. And I'm thinking, that's not particularly complicated either. She means this to be a beginning lace pattern. But I am thinking of changing colors and doing a high contrast color for the knitted lace edge. We'll see how that goes. But right now, you do 4 repeats of the major chart for the body of the shawl. And you do 8 repeats, and I have done 4 of the 8. But of course, each repeat is getting a little wider. Not much. They increase by, I forget what it is. I think it's 4 stitches per row. But it's getting longer and longer to do the body, and it's getting broader and broader. It starts at the top line center, and it's beautiful and it's fun, and I'm deeply, deeply enjoying it. Remember Twin Faces vest in the pretty salmon or coral? Well, it's somewhere in the mail system. She hasn't gotten it yet after about a week and a half, so that is still in transit. But meanwhile, I decided to celebrate Vestuary for February by doing a similar vest for myself, but I'm using the Malabrigo Rios I had stashed in Pines, which is a gorgeous color. It is green with blue undertones, no yellowy green, and it's really, really pretty. And I'm just making a plain vest, V-neck vest, nothing special. I was going to because I got a book by, let me lean over and make sure I say this right, Mucklestone. Yes, what a wonderful name. There we go, Mary Jane Mucklestone. I couldn't think of her first name for love or money. And it's 200 Fair Isle motifs from Interweave Press, and I highly recommend this book, I have to say. And so I was going to use one or two of those motifs, and then said, no, I just am loving the pure pines right now. This is a beautiful book. In the beginning, of course, they do the thing you want them to do. But Interweave Press is like that. It's a really wonderful press. They really think of everything. I am looking at a paper-bound copy, not any kind of internet copy or Kindle copy. And in the beginning of the book, there's simply an index with pictures of each motif. And they're just great. Everything from incredibly simple to very sophisticated. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And I just want to take my time and leaf through it and then do something more fantastic. This might be the time for me to learn how to steek a vest with a V-neck so that I can knit these in the round and do a true Fair Isle sweater, which is to say many, many, many motifs stacked on top of each other with plain ribbing at the neck and shoulders. And the back can be plain or can be covered in the Fair Isle motifs as well. At any rate, I decided not to rush this, so I'm just doing a plain vest. And this is out of the Knitter's Handy Book of Patterns by Ann Budd, one of my perennial favorites. Now, I have used that book a lot. I have gotten gauge, and yet things are always coming out too big for me. This may well be because I'm not thinking of ease appropriately, that I'm just saying, okay, 40-inch chest, and doing it straight up. And of course, once you wash and block, everything stretches a little. So I think the problem is I'm getting positive ease. So I was using size 8 needles, getting 5 stitches per inch with worsted, and coming out with somewhat baggy vests, which are okay, but they're not quite what I wanted. So I went back and looked at the sweaters I've knit this year that have negative ease, and I started reconfiguring what I was doing. So this time, what I did was, instead of casting on 100 stitches in size 8 needles to get a 40-inch chest, I cast on 100 stitches on size 7 needles, and it worked terrifically. I have got the Pines vest. I started at the bottom. I put 4 inches of a 1x1 rib, and then I'm just knitting stockinette, and I think I've got a total of about 13 to 13 and a half inches. And I finally took it off the needles and tried it on today, and it looks terrific. Unblocked, it has about 2 inches of negative ease. I'm pretty sure that's going to stretch when I block it. So I've really found what I should be doing with my vests if this works out, because it looks really good. It looks like it's working out. I am stunned at how much difference there is between knitting this on a size 8 and a size 7. But again, my older vests, for one thing, I've been a little more stressed lately, so I'm probably knitting tighter. But another thing is those older vests knitted on the size 8s have been blocked and have had time to stretch. So that might be making the difference. At any rate, it's a neat trick because I get to use all these stitch count numbers for the 100 stitch sized vest that I've been making. I'm just using smaller needles. I like the fabric that I'm getting too. I like the slightly tighter fabric. In the meantime, I decided I wanted to make a temperature blanket for 2021. But I've been struggling with this decision for literally months because I could not pick the colors I wanted. And I was looking at wool, but I thought, well, I could go someplace inexpensive like Knit Picks to get wool, but I don't know if I'm willing to risk mothing the blankets. It's a blanket I'd want to have on my bed all the time. Well, I have to admit it, Knit Picks solved the problem for me. Now, you have heard me many times say, for heaven's sake, do not buy tools and supplies from Knit Picks, and I'm going to stick with that. But I'm perfectly happy to buy yarn, and they got me. They had a beautiful pattern called the Hue Shift blanket, which you could knit or crochet, and they did it in an acrylic in their Brava yarn, and they did this beautiful gradient spectrum of colors. And yes, the Hue Shift is insanely beautiful, but I'm not going to do that right now. I may go back with my leftovers. But I guessed out how big a full-size temperature blanket would be, and I decided to buy 2 of the Hue Shift kits. It's $50 total. I mean, these are not expensive kits. And so I was really, really happy. I'm waiting to get the yarn, but I'm getting 2 of these, which means I'm going to have 4 skeins of some colors and 2 skeins of others. And I'm thinking that should get me through this pretty well. If not, since it is their in-house Brava yarn, I can order extra skeins in the colors I need as I go. But it makes me happy because I will have a lot of extra yarn to do an edging. So if I don't make the blanket very wide, but I do want it to go on our queen size bed, what I will end up doing is picking a width for the temperature part and then just using the leftover yarn to do an edging until I get a big enough blanket for the bed. So I'm very, very excited about this, and this is the temperature blanket. And yes, I have been keeping track every day of the high temperature in our area. I do not want to do the high temperature and the low temperature as some people do. I just plan to do the high temperatures because somehow I think if I do 2 rows for each day, that's a lot. That's like almost 800. Am I doing my math right? Well, it's not quite 800. That's, like 770. I can't think. I'm talking. 770 rows, something like that. So that seems pretty good to me. So I'm waiting on that. In the meantime, Knit Picks had a sale, as they do, on the red and pink yarns to celebrate Valentine's Day. And they celebrate St. Patrick's Day by doing a sale on their green yarns. Well, that's last year. That's how I ended up making my Agnes sweater in the Aurora Heather Wool of the Andes Bulky, which is basically a lovely forest green. And I wasn't going to do that again, but I was thinking I really want to make another Agnes sweater. I really like my Agnes sweater. It came out great. It is a fast sweater because it's in bulky yarn. And on top of it, you don't do any short rows at the back of the neck. So the front of the sweater is the exact same as the back of the sweater. You do it on big needles. Now the Agnes, you're supposed to insert these pockets. No, I didn't care. I didn't want the pockets. So I just had bought yarn for the pockets, which they use a worsted weight yarn. I just tossed that aside. And I love my Agnes without its pockets. I love it. And it's in a beautiful, beautiful heathery green. So, of course, I bought a heathery garnet red called Current. And as last year, for the first Agnes in the Aurora Heather, I paid $43. That includes shipping and tax for the sweater. I don't really know many places you're going to get a hand-knit, fitted-to-you sweater for $43 in a pure wool. So I am pretty happy. The Agnes, the first Agnes, probably cost a little more because I got it in the bulky superwash Wool of the Andes. The Current was the only red I really liked, and it's in the regular non-superwash Wool of the Andes. Who cares? I'm never going to throw one of my big sweaters into the washing machine. I'll wash them by hand. So that's where we are on my hooks and needles. Currently, I am wearing, I love these things. I am wearing my scrap socks, and you should have a look at these. I'm really proud of these. I had tried several Franken sock type recipes, and I finally hit on a formula I like. I always have odds and ends of sock yarn lying around. And I realized finally the way to do it was not to use any fancy knots. I just simply tie off my yarn and thread it back in the way I would normally. I didn't do any kind of fancy slip knots or anything to join the yarns. And I liked so many of my yarns and couldn't decide between them, and also couldn't tell, do I really have enough to use at any length? So I came up with this formula, and I hope you like it. First of all, I had 2 sock yarn colors that I didn't really like, but strangely, they were very complementary. One was an old Cascade stripe in purples. The other is a sock designed to be Ravenclaw, I believe, from Harry Potter. And it's a slightly uneven stripe. And so I really didn't want to use those above the foot because I thought, yeah, those stripes can be hidden in the shoe. And so I took those. Now, I do top down. So my first decision, though, was these are 2 not as pretty sock yarns. So I decided they would be the feet of the socks. And I'll come back to them. And then I took my very favorite yarns. And let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. Now, I do the legs of my socks 7 inches. The first 2 inches are 1 by 1 rib. So I took my favorite color and I did 20 rows in 1x1 rib for the tops of each sock, same color. So the socks match. The legs of the socks match. It's the feet that are different. Okay, so the first stripe from the top was 20 rows in a 1x1 rib. I cast on 64 stitches on my size 2 needles. And then when I was switching to stockinette after the 2 inches, after that every stripe is only 10 rows wide, because 10 rows is about an inch for me, a little more, okay? So the first colorway was in 1x1 rib for 2 inches. Then the next stripes, I did 5 yarns, matching stripes on each leg. So the next stripe is in an orange on both legs, heading down towards the foot, and I think it's oink yarns, and I'm trying to remember. Anyway, the next stripe after that is this lovely light tan. The next stripe after that was in this stripy green, but it worked, and so on down to the foot. So the legs of the socks, everything you can see above the shoe matches, because you can see the 6 stripes, one stripe at the top being 2 inches wide, everybody else being about 1 inch. When I got down to the afterthought heels, I put in my waste yarn, and then I went to the 2 colors of the yarns I didn't like so much. So on the left sock, I did the instep in the purple stripe. On the right sock, I did the instep in the blue and bronze stripe. Okay, so then when I finished those, I went back to the heels and I reversed them. For the sock with the purple foot, I used the yellow and blue heel. For the sock with the yellow and blue foot, I used the purple heel. I love these socks like crazy. I get incredible compliments on them. They're very handsome. Nothing has unraveled. They've held together well in the washing machine. So that's my scrap sock recipe, that you can stripe your yarns. And if you have yarns that you're not particularly fond of, hide them in your shoes and switch them off. You just need enough of those foot yarns to make one solid foot, heel and instep, and then you can switch the heels between the feet. Okay, meanwhile, what else am I wearing? Well, I set the new world's record for how much knitting you can wear in one day. Not exactly, but I enjoyed it. I was out walking, and I was wearing a turtleneck and leggings, as I do, and then I had one of my hand-sewn corduroy dresses over it. And the dress is in reds and blues and a little bit of turquoisey green. Just trust me, it works. And so over this, I was wearing as much knitwear as I could. So I had on the stripy socks, and then I had on the green Agnes sweater, and then over that I had my beautiful clapotee shawl in various blues in Noro yarn, and then I had middies, my little middies out of cheap Regia yarn, and let me think what else I had. I had my Ricky hat, which is a hand dye from Rock and String in a DK. It's a blues and greens on white. I can't remember the name of the colorway. So I ended up wearing 5 items of knitwear along with my handmade dress, which made me very, very happy. I'm going to skip right on to the strategy. We were doing ACCEPTS. That is, it is the acronym for how to distract yourself when you are distressed. Because what you want to do is, when you are distressed, to calm yourself down, the most common human strategy is to self-distract. ACCEPTS tells you ways you can do it without doing harm to yourself. You have to keep in mind, this was formulated when the person designing this protocol, Dr. Marsha Linehan, was looking at people who, when they were distressed, would try to kill themselves or cut themselves or burn themselves or drink or use drugs. So those are the bad distraction strategies. So Linehan set about teaching them, how do you distract yourself in a healthy and safe way? Now last week I talked about the E for emotion. And I talked about separating your emotion from the actual problem, that the problem is outside you most of the time. It's often not your fault, but you still have to manage it. And to do that, you first have to manage your emotional response to the problem. I was listening to it and thinking, well, sounds good, but I really do not put much emphasis in episode 14 about the fact that this is self-care. When you are managing your emotion, you are supposed to manage it in a way that respects the emotion and cares for yourself. So if you're upset about a problem, you recognize my emotion is sadness or distress or unhappiness. And instead of solving the problem, I'm going to say, how do I take care of myself when I am upset this way? Like if I am angry, do I take care of myself by calming down, taking deep breaths? If I am sad, do I let myself have a good cry? Do I take a hot bubble bath? And so on. So please remember, when you're doing the E for emotion, please remember that this is meant to be self-care. You're meant to be nice to yourself to calm your painful emotion. I'm not sure I said that as clearly as I'd like to. Now we're on the P, as in push. The P stands for push away. That is, when you need to distract yourself, give yourself a brief, timed mental break. So you're just frantic about some bad news. And so you're really, really upset, okay? Now, again, there's bad news. The problem is outside you, whatever it is. Not necessarily. You could have just gotten a bad diagnosis from a doctor or something. But the problem is going to keep. That's why we can use distraction. That problem isn't going anywhere. So what you do is you say, all right, I'm going to give myself X number of minutes to take a brief mental vacation, to calm down, to breathe, to practice mindfulness, to meditate, to knit, dye, weave, crochet, felt, whatever you do. But I'm just going to give myself a few minutes to do something else. And during those few minutes, I give myself permission not to think of the problem. Now you can hear this is kind of related to the E that I just talked about. You're really trying to handle your emotion, okay? But what you find is when you do a push away, you come back to the problem and usually you feel much better. Like you feel like you can get a grip on things. Now I will tell you, when I get anxious, my push away takes 20 minutes. But I have learned that if I get scared or upset, it takes me about 20 minutes to get myself to a place where I can now go back and look at the problem without panic and more realistically. And that's a push away. This is one of my favorite. E and P are my two favorites, I have to admit, in the whole X steps. Okay, so P stands for, I'm really upset. I'm going to push away the problem for just a limited time, and I give myself permission to come back to the problem when I'm ready. So I'm not saying I'm going to pretend the problem doesn't exist. I'm not going to go into a state of denial. The whole plan with a push away is I will return to the problem, but I'm going to let myself do something else and distract my thinking for a fixed period of time, and then I'm going to come back to the problem. Now, about that fixed period of time, this is a good thing to know if you have anxiety problems. We tell people with anxiety problems, we say, if you have a panic attack, take your watch and time how long your panic attack lasts. Now, that's hard to do. You usually get it wrong. You usually say, oh, I'm really panicking. Okay, it's 7:39. But then you forget, when you feel good, you forget to look at the clock again. So, you may look at the clock and go, oh, no, it's 8:39, but I've been calm for about half an hour. So you subtract, you go, well, that was about 30 minutes of panic. That is good enough. But one of the ways to manage panic attacks is to actually time them. And you don't have to be perfect. Because what's going to happen, suppose you use that last example and you say, well, I seem to have panicked for about 30 minutes, give or take a few. The next time you panic, you say, I panic for about 30 minutes at a time. So you look at a clock and you say, oh, it's 7:39. Okay, well, 7:40. So that means by 8:10, I should be over my panic. And what happens is you kind of trick your brain, that you begin to train your brain to limit the panic. And then your brain will try to help you out by making it even shorter. So your 30-minute panic attack will start looking like a 25-minute panic attack because your brain is getting what you're doing and trying to help you. So that's a trick for anxiety. Time your panic and then know that time. And the next time you panic, look at a clock and say, okay, if I panic for 30 minutes, then 30 minutes from now, and you name that time, by that time I will be okay. Okay. This is an example of using the push away to manage anxiety. If you are depressed, though, you're perfectly able to use a push away. You're really sad, you're really upset. You say, I'm just going to give myself a break for X minutes and then come back to the problem. Maybe you go and do something else. Maybe when you come back, you can finally have that good cry you need to have or do something to help yourself. Okay. Put a lid on it. Well, we broke the Romertopf. For those of you who don't know, Ramertopf is a traditional clay baking pan, like roasting pan with a lid. As you can guess, it's German in origin. And Ramertopf's, the lid is unglazed clay, and the bottom is somewhat glazed, okay? And the point of a Ramertopf is to steam your food. Now, these hit America in the 1970s, and they used to tell you things like you have to soak it overnight in a full sink of water. I remember doing that, which is why I didn't use mine very much, but I did have one. My husband discovered it a few weeks ago. I kept telling him, you have to soak it. He didn't. Crackety, crack, crack, crack. We replaced it. But this time, I replaced it. I was sad because I felt like that Ramertopf I've literally had for 30 years. I was sorry to see it go. But I had forgotten how to use it, and I was not making the demands I needed to make on him to use it properly. So this time, for Valentine's Day, I got him the original German recipe book that's supposed to go with the Ramertopf. That was not cheap, even though it's quite small, and paperback, and pamphlet, bigger than pamphlet size, but not much. So over Valentine's breakfast, I was reading him Ramertopf Proper Care. And we were both embarrassed, because I should have stopped him. I just let him destroy that Ramertopf. It lasted much longer than I would have thought it would. And he said, oh, I don't know why I didn't see this. So we were really working on how long do you soak it. Fortunately, they now say you soak the lid, not the bottom, in water for about 15 minutes. I saw somebody on YouTube who just filled both the top and the bottom with water and let them sit on her counter for 15 minutes, then emptied the water and did a roast chicken. The important thing about a Ramertopf, if you've never had a roast anything from a Ramertopf, you've really missed something. They're incredible. They make things incredibly tender and juicy, and yet you will get a crispy skin on your bird. They do beef and veal and anything you want. They also do vegetables. You can have vegetarian Ramertopf, and you can even bake bread in it. And the bread is very easy and apparently comes out just wonderful with a simply excellent crust. So we now have the Ramertopf. Well, we don't have the pot yet. I ordered it. It's supposed to come in the next few days. But we have the Ramertopf cookbook. The picture I have on the show notes, I simply stole from Williams-Sonoma. Thank you, Williams-Sonoma. And you can buy them anywhere you want. Walmart sells them for about $50, but I'm a little nervous about that. I bought the standard 2 to 4 person size. I forget how many quarts that is. It's the most common size you see. I bought it from Amazon. With all the shipping and everything else, it was $100. So this isn't cheap, but my last one lasted me 30 years until we literally executed it. I mean, we assassinated that thing. So I'm expecting this one to outlive me, frankly. They're great, great tools in the kitchen. Oh, shoot, you may notice if you look on my notes, on my show notes, I am posting pictures of myself walking again. I'm walking 30 minutes a day. But this time I got a Fitbit. I decided that I wanted to really work on the basic triad of mental health, which is eat, sleep, exercise. You must get those 3 things right, and they must be in balance with each other. And I finally decided I have not been sleeping well enough, and I can't track my sleep on my Apple Watch, much as I like my Apple Watch. I'm wearing both the Apple Watch and a Fitbit now. So I got the cheap Fitbit. And I've really enjoyed the Fitbit. I just put the A Watch on again today because I wanted a few more functions while I'm home all day. But the Fitbit will do you pretty good. If you need a timepiece and you want to track your heartbeat and sleep, and it has a few other simple apps, and it will read notifications from your phone, albeit a bit clumsily. I'm enjoying the Fitbit a lot. I didn't think I would like it as much as I do. It's not highly intuitive. You do have to keep going back and checking those instructions. But it's been nice to track my sleep. And interestingly enough, I've also been tracking my steps. My default for steps every day seems to be about 5,700 steps a day, which surprised me. I'm doing a lot of walking around the farm. And that's the same whether I walk a mile or I don't, which really surprised me. So I'm going to keep following up on that. The other nice thing was my resting heart rate has already started to go down from walking every day. If that is not a convincing reason to walk, I don't know what is. And I went out walking one day and found myself running. This was stupid. I was in our back 40, our big back field, on very rough ground, wearing, of all things, a dress and clogs. Running in clogs is one of the dumbest things you can do. And then I was running on wildly uneven ground, and I loved it. I was running 1/10 of a mile at a time, and it felt so good to run again. So I can see the running's coming back, although my lungs need some work before I can get serious about it. So at any rate, I am now walking about 30 minutes 5 days a week, using my Fitbit to check my steps. I am also using several apps and having a great time. One of them, if you look on the Blogspot page, you will see it in the top right corner, walkingforfun.com. That's the number 4, walkingforfun.com. It's free, and you just go in there and you sync it with your Fitbit, and then you walk. And it will let you pick a long-distance trail. Currently, I'm doing one of the Pilgrims trails from France to Spain. And I think I already did the Pacific Crest Trail. Every day when you walk, it will show you photographs from previous walkers and also from Google Earth of the actual place you would be on the trail if you were walking the trail. So it's just a cool thing to do, and I'm enjoying that. I'm also turning on charity miles, and it's only a mile a day, but lately I've been matched by Johnson & Johnson, which is nice. They pay like 1/10 of a penny for every mile. So, I won't be making a huge donation, but still, I'm doing that. So it's been really fun just going out and walking, tracking my steps, doing a mile, and using the apps to enjoy traveling. I'm also using an app called yes.fit. And on that one, I'm doing races. They had a whole bunch of free races, so I bought, quote unquote, bought all the free races. So I just finished walking around the Ring of Kerry in Ireland. And I've actually done parts of the Ring of Kerry, so it was fun to recognize things. Now I'm doing one called Vikings, or Viking Conquest. I seem to be walking around Norway. So that's been a lot of fun. So you can see I have all these different things that when I go walking, when I'm finished, I can look at all these pictures as a kind of reward. A little positive incentive there. I will talk about these apps more later. I will try to do them more one at a time. Something I really like. Well, you may remember in episode 14, I went to town on the Remarkable, and I kept saying, please don't start. All the Apple people go nuts when you talk about these e-ink tablets. I don't know what it is. Android people are at peace with the world. Apple people are like perpetually on edge that someone's going to somehow discredit Apple. Considering the actual business blunders Apple has done over the years, if Apple doesn't destroy itself, I really doubt some of us liking e-ink pads is going to do the job for them. But I am an Apple fan, so I say that with some chagrin, because Apple's strategies have not always been the best. But now, when you go into the e-ink market, what you are looking for is a computerized handwriting experience that feels good. You're never going to get that from a glass-topped tablet, Android, Apple, I don't care who. You're never going to get that. That's the whole reason the e-ink market exists. So, I'm a fan of the Remarkable, and I started reviewing the other ones. I'm not going to bother with the Sony version because it's not very popular. I'm not even sure if it's still made. And it gets terrible reviews. What Sony got right in their model, and it's got some like letters and numbers kind of name. It's not intuitive. But what they got right, of all the models I've seen reviewed, everybody says the writing experience on the Sony is by far the best, that it really feels like a paper and pencil. So that's cool, but I'm not going to do that. The Remarkable places really respectably. It's the original of these things. And what was interesting was the Moby Scribe came out as a Kickstarter about a year after the Remarkable. And the Moby Scribe was some engineer in San Jose who said, I could do better than the Remarkable. There's a lot of things the Remarkable lacks, which I think is a good argument. And the first thing he did was he said the Remarkable is way too expensive. At the time it was $700, plus $100 extra for the boiled wool case. I managed to get my case for free, but that was lucky. Okay. So this engineer said, I could do that better and cheaper. The other thing is the Remarkable is kind of a European logic. Europeans use a bigger size for their default notebook than Americans use. So the Remarkable is that larger size. And the Remarkable has an astonishing feel to it when you're writing. It really feels like you're writing on paper. And that's where, for those of us who like e-ink, it wins over using a pen on a tablet. That when you use a glass surface tablet, it is an unpleasant surface to write on for any length of time. It's too slick. You need a little resistance, okay? So anyway, this engineer comes out with the MobiScribe, and he does some very clever things. First thing is, he makes it smaller. If you look at a Remarkable, the writing surface is about the size of the surface of an iPad. The MobiScribe, the surface is slightly smaller than the screen of the iPad mini I'm staring at right now. That's quite small. It's quite a big difference. It has a big impact on how you write. The other thing he did that was brilliant, though, was he said, now it's going to be portable, and I really respect that. I don't need that, but a lot of people I asked said they love the smaller size. I don't like it, but I can see why you would. It's just not my cup of tea. It's just an opinion thing. Okay, so the other thing he did that was brilliant was he put a front light on it, so you can light it up the way you would light up a tablet. The original Remarkable does not have that. Now, they've come out with the Remarkable 2. I don't know if that has it or not. I don't care. My original Remarkable is so good, I don't feel the need to look at a Remarkable 2. So meanwhile, things moved on. And there's a lot of other changes. The MobiScribe is on an Android platform. The Remarkable is on its own unique platform. The Remarkable has a cloud that works really well. When you buy a Remarkable, you have access to the cloud. The Remarkable saves everything automatically to PDF, which is very, very nice. It's instantly transferable. You can plug your Remarkable into the USB port of your PC and just literally drag things over. It's very, very nice. The MobiScribe doesn't. The MobiScribe has its own unique format, and then you can save it as a PDF, but you have to go through one extra step. It's not that difficult. All right, so I got the MobiScribe because it was on sale really cheaply for the holidays. And I thought, why not? And if nothing else, I'll carry it around when I carry a small purse instead of carrying the whole Remarkable. And I have some more valuable things I've saved on the Remarkable that I don't necessarily want to leave my house. So I got the MobiScribe, and I really like it. I don't like it as much as I like the Remarkable. I think this bias may be based on which one you got first, the MobiScribe or the Remarkable. Now, currently the Remarkable is about $400. The MobiScribe is somewhere between $130 and $200, depending on when you buy it. The MobiScribe comes with a case and a pen and some nibs. The Remarkable comes with a pen and some nibs, and I got it with the case included on sale. So you kind of watch for that with the Remarkable. They may have changed that. They may now give you the boiled wool case, but they have nicer leather cases you can buy for extra. Okay. And the other thing is, the Remarkable has its own app that goes on any platform. And so you can open the contents of your Remarkable and manipulate them on any other computer. And that is wonderful. Now, you cannot change the contents. You can rename a file, but you can't write on it unless you're on the Remarkable. However, I cannot tell you how many times I've pulled out my Apple tablet and opened it up to a PDF of one of my knitting patterns, which I had already taken notes on in the Remarkable, and now I can use it somewhere else, notes and all. So I wanted to review the MobiScribe against the Remarkable. And I decided the best way to do that was actually let the MobiScribe people do it. I will say this. The MobiScribe people have a really active, friendly, supportive Facebook page. The Remarkable people, it's okay. So anyway, I really have to say I like the MobiScribe community a lot. So I just wrote and said, here's what I want. Can you guys review them? Can you compare them? Can you tell me why you chose the MobiScribe or how you feel about them? And I said, we're not going to say anything mean about either one, but I would just like to know how you think about them in comparison. I got great answers. The consensus was pretty clear. Most of the people said, look, I'm in this for the writing surface. The MobiScribe's writing surface is not nearly as good as the Remarkable's, but it's not nearly as bad as a tablet computer with a glass tablet like an Android or Apple. So they said the thing is, the MobiScribe is considerably less than a Remarkable. And a few people said, if I could afford a Remarkable, I'd have one. But since I can't, the MobiScribe's great. So everybody was happy about the price. The size was 50-50. A lot of people said, I like the bigger size of the Remarkable, but I can carry my MobiScribe very easily. A lot of people just said, I prefer the smaller size. Everybody agreed the Remarkable has a better writing surface than the MobiScribe. That's not something people are arguing about. Everybody agreed that both models have a pen that does not need to be charged, and that's enormously helpful because both the Remarkable and the MobiScribe stay charged for weeks. So you don't have to worry about charging all the time. You don't run out of charge. It's really, really nice. The MobiScribe people, some of them said, I really like the Android platform because you can load Android apps onto your MobiScribe. They make it a little challenging. They have their own special app that you have to load from the Mobi store, and then that will let you load Android apps. And people have loaded reading apps for various ebook publication formats. So you can read all your ebooks on the MobiScribe, and it's like reading them on an Android machine. I would have to say, if you render your books as PDFs, you can certainly read them on the Remarkable. I don't use the Remarkable for that. I'm perfectly happy to read my ebooks on my various iPad tablets, and I just turn off any kind of Wi-Fi connection so it saves the battery, and I just read the ebooks I've stored in my Kindle app. But I can see a lot of people like it, and this leads to the part where I say, all right, Apple people, now, if you want to start screaming at the MobiScribe people, please go ahead, because the MobiScribe people are more in the Apple camp. Like, they say things like, rather than carry my iPad, I can carry my MobiScribe and get a lot more functionality in certain situations. So the big consensus was students said, I love taking it to class, taking notes in class, but I can still read the web. I would imagine very slowly. I don't think the MobiScribe's a great web reading tool, although it can do it, but not like an iPad or an Android tablet. But anyway, a lot of people said, rather than carry two things, my tablet computer and my e-ink, I would rather just carry a MobiScribe. And that is true, that if I want to take notes with my Remarkable, but I also want to do some internet stuff, I'm probably going to end up carrying the Remarkable and the iPad. But apparently there are other Android apps you can use on the MobiScribe. I haven't got any interest in that. I really look at the e-ink platform as just me taking notes, me writing journals, me putting signatures on forms and sending them back to people, me writing notes on my PDFs of my knitting patterns. But anyway, that was kind of the breakdown. It was nice. The MobiScribers are a nice bunch. Nobody wanted to fight about which is better. Only one guy was like, the MobiScribe is better, and that's just that. But everybody else was like, no, there's distinct advantages to each platform. I am not going to be a convert to the MobiScribe. I did put it next to my bed last night and was using it to handwrite my journal. It was not nearly as pleasant as handwriting on the Remarkable. I have to be honest, but I had the Remarkable in my study charging. But would I recommend the MobiScribe? Sure I would. If you want to spend $200 or under, I would recommend the MobiScribe. You don't need an app for the MobiScribe. Well, I wish there was an app where you could read your MobiScribe on your tablets the way you can with a Remarkable. I kind of regret that. Front light on the MobiScribe makes up for a lot of ills. It's really nice to be sitting in the dark and hit that front light and be able to read and write. That was really nice. If the Remarkable 2 has that, well, okay. But if it doesn't, I have to say that was a winner on the MobiScribe. The feel is not as good. Some people switch out the MobiScribe stylus for a different stylus you buy, at some kind of stationery store. I'm not going to go through that much research. It was okay. I enjoyed it. It was okay. Probably because I look at my job the way I do, and also because I'm comfortable holding a bigger pad when I'm jotting notes. I would still recommend the Remarkable if you have the money. But you won't lose by getting a MobiScribe. You just won't have the best writing experience. But the functionality in other ways makes up for a lot of ills. There is one thing that has to be said, and that is the MobiScribe is not as well made as I would like. The outer frame is like a sticky plastic, and it was bubbled when I got it. I smoothed it with my fingers, but I did not like that. The pen feels cheap, the stylus. I did not like that. The case is very, very cheap, and the edges curl up, and everybody's always trying to solve that problem. They call it taco case, and they're trying to make it plain and flat. So, it's not huge, but I didn't like the way it did not feel very well made in some of its little details, but it's not enough that I would say don't buy it. And, again, it connects very nicely to the internet, and you can do a lot of functions on it that you're not going to do on a Remarkable. The reason I give the iPad people permission to carry on and scream about, no, you can do all that on an iPad. With a MobiScribe, I tend more to agree with you, but the writing sensation with the pen is still a heck of a lot better than the writing sensation with an iPen on a glass tablet surface. You just can't change that. That writing on the glass is so unpleasant. And if I were drawing, now, if I'm scribbling or doodling, that's one thing, but if I were really trying to make art, there's no way I'd be doing that on a glass surface if I could help it, unless I wanted to make a glass surface specific type of art. I would far rather use the MobiScribe, and I suspect the MobiScribe might be better at artwork than the Remarkable is. I'm not enough of an artist to know. They both have layering. You can get an app from Mac that will give you a layering art form as well. Again, it's just whether or not you want to be on a glass surface. I don't. So there's the MobiScribe. In the blather, well, I don't have a lot to say, which is good because I'm going on and on. I am scheduled for my second vaccine at the end of the month. We shall see how that goes. So I am collecting my supplies to make sure that I can handle the various problems like windstorms and filthy restrooms, lack of toileting. In the meantime, this Friday, we're going to test Gimli the generator again because Edison is actually telling us they're shutting off our power to do some system repairs. So this should be interesting because I'm going to be seeing patients, and it looks like the hours we will be shut off will be exactly the hours I'm seeing patients. So we are prepping up Gimli, the little Westinghouse generator, to do his thing on Friday. I've had issues with Libsyn, as I think most of you have noticed, that episode 13 published and then vanished. So thank you, those of you who wrote and said, hey, episode 13 can't be downloaded. I did reload it and take down the original posting. I don't know what Libsyn was doing. Every time I schedule an episode to post, it posts at least twice, sometimes 3 times. Libsyn is really kind of screwed up. I don't know what their problem is. I'm not doing anything wrong. So thank you. And if you're seeing problems with Libsyn, feel free to send me a message through the blog or through the Ravelry group. I am trying to remember to check Ravelry daily. I also had a wild week where I said, I have an awful lot of leftover yarn. I have a lot of leftover sock yarns, so I know another pair of scrappy, stripy socks are coming up, which is why I'm thinking about them in this episode so much. But I also realized I've got a lot of DK left, which might mean another Ricky hat, or it might mean another Comcal, or both. Then I realized, I've got some extra bulky from my first Agnes and realized I could make a bandana cowl with that from the Pearl Soho recipe, which is lovely. And those bandana cowls are fantastic. Apart from doing Comcals with my leftovers, with my hand-spun yarn, I've done several bandana cowls with that pattern in different weights of yarn, adjusting the needles, and just loved it. So I can't recommend that pattern enough. Stay tuned because really I've started adding these kinds of little projects to my Ravelry queue with no pictures and just a note to myself which yarn I want to use. Because I'm really getting to a place where I have a lot of leftovers and I'd like to just go through them, And apart from that, I am waiting for my beautiful Hue Shift yarn. And I have already received the garnet yarn, the bulky, from Knit Picks. So I'm also expecting to finish the current vest for myself and then move on to another Agnes, I'm thinking, unless I feel like I need a break by doing a different sweater. I think I want to do the next Agnes while the weather is still cool and I'm ready to have a big bulky yarn in my lap. So there you go. I think that's really about it. Thank you so much for hanging in with me for so long. Thank you for all your kindness, everybody. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the people who wrote to me and said, wow, you talk fast. I listen to you at 1.5 times speed or 2.0 times speed. I can't imagine what I sound like at those speeds. I would think I sound like a chipmunk on LSD. Which reminds me to say, if you want to look in the show notes, it is Valentine's Day. I got flowers. I got chocolate from my beloved spouse. But the beloved son gave me the greatest thing, and the picture is in the show notes. It is an alpaca, a little stuffed alpaca. But it looks like it's on LSD. It is a Valentine's alpaca, so it has long fur that is orange and pink and purple in the most neon of colors. So there we go, the Valentine's alpaca or the Valpaca. So happy Valentine's Day, and may you all get your own Valpaca of happiness from someone you love. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody remember, wear your mask, wash your hands, social distance, and most of all, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.